Part 24. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 231. The real master of this 10,000 swords fairy war that lasted for more than 10 months was actually located 300 feet above the 10,000 swords fairy mountain B/U003E. For Wu Yu, this location was already above the clouds, within the immortal sect of Xuanhuan, an area where Fandan disciples were prohibited from flying, so Wu Yu could not see it. Therefore, he didn't know where the 40-year-old top genius Galaxy Sword Master described by the old man in black robe was. After rejecting the black-robed old man's reminder to replace someone, Wu Yu was actually speechless. 40 years old, only twice my age, why not be as good as senior brother Yuxue, who is already a heavenly sword-level disciple, and the strongest among them? Wu Yu remembered that among all the heavenly sword-level disciples, there was a Sky Sword Immortal list. The heavenly sword immortal ranking does not change frequently. Could it be that this Galaxy Sword Master is the number one on the heavenly sword immortal ranking? He was given the title of Galaxy Sword Master when he was still a heavenly sword-level disciple. It can be seen that this person is not far away from the real Xuanhuan Sword Master. In fact, I am afraid that he is already such a powerful person. Call it. I didn't expect that the heavenly sword-level disciple who presided over it would have such a big background. Compared with him, that pagoda was really worse than shit. In fact, it was Wu Yu who was ignorant. The name of Galaxy Sword Master Shenzhenjiao was unknown to almost everyone in Xuanhuan, except for some new disciples. Wu Yu rarely had contact with other disciples, so he didn't know about this legendary figure. Shenzhenjiao, the ruler of Shu Mountain, is a direct disciple of one of the 7 immortals of Shu Mountain. He has also received all the inheritance from the ancient ascetic Star Sword Emperor. He is one of the geniuses most promising to become an immortal in the future. He is at the level of a sword master, not its end. It is rumored that he can become the level of the 7 immortals of Xuanhuan. Although the ancient monk Starry Sword Emperor didn't leave many stories behind, we can at least know that he was a figure who once dominated the divine continent. It is said that he died when he was about to become an immortal, and he was far away from becoming an immortal. Is not far away. Shenzhenjiao has received everything he has since he was a child, so he has been able to defeat many enemies all the way. In terms of talent, few people at his age can compare with him. Many Fandan disciples regard Shenzhenjiao as their dream. 300 feet above the 10,000 swords flying immortal mountain, there are 5 cultivators at this time. They have no swords and are almost standing in the void. These people are old and young, male and female, but there is no exception. They are all quite high-level ascetics. They are the earth sword level. In fact, they were the ones who actually came forward to guard the 10,000 swords fairy war. These few are almost all cultivators from Zifukang. They have reached a huge level beyond the realm of Jindan Dao. They can be regarded as existences that surpass Jindan. Their every move has a huge impact on the entire battlefield. Although there are hundreds of battles taking place now, in fact, almost every battle cannot escape their eyes. They have a panoramic view of every disciple's background, ability, and talent. In fact, these 10,000 sword immortals, the list was set up to select the good ones among Fandan disciples. Among them was a woman, wearing a purple sword robe, with black hair falling like a waterfall, reaching her waist. The sword robe was wide, but it still could not hide her exquisite figure. Her plump curves were as if carved by the sky, almost perfect, especially that her skin is as delicate and smooth as snow, and can be broken by a blow. She also has a face that contains thousands of amorous feelings. Her every frown and smile are all captivating. Her eyes seem to be able to speak, but they also seem to be able to see through people's thoughts. There is nowhere to hide. This is the biological sister of the Galaxy Sword Master. She is a few years younger, but she can become an earth sword leveler and can be regarded as one of the top geniuses in Xuanhuan. His name is Shenzhenjiao. At this time, there was a beautiful woman in blue clothes next to her, who was also an earth sword level monk. She pointed in a certain direction below and said, "Xingyu, there is a person at the second level of the Golden Core realm over there. After ringing the ancient bell, now you have to challenge your little disciple. This little guy is quite crazy. He's quite an interesting kid. Let's see how he behaves. Just don't make my little Kanghai cry." Shen Xingyu chuckled softly, which was very touching. "Hey, you are actually a child too, not much older than them, so don't pretend to be old." Shen Xingyu said, "That's not possible. Although they are about the same age, I am at the earth sword level. In my eyes, these are all children." In fact, she had been observing Wu Yu for quite some time, and finally came to the conclusion, the quality of the sun's golden elixir is extremely high, and it is very likely that it is of miraculous quality. This is already very rare, and I don't know what kind of physical training he practices method. It is rare to be able to forge your body to such an extent at such a young age. It's a pity that you are a bit older. If you were 10 years younger, except for the inheritance, you could almost be on par with my brother." Thinking of her brother, she looked up. 100 feet above her head, there was a dark purple star. The star was very small and emitted purple light. This light was swallowing up the vast spiritual energy and gathering in the star. "What a Taoist idiot! I asked you to come out and relax and supervise the 10,000 Swords Fairy War. It would be better for you to leave the task to us and continue to practice by yourself. Still in public, it's really..." Although it was a complaint, Shen Xinyu's eyes were actually full of admiration. In fact, when Wu Yu looked up, he could vaguely see a star above his head. Perhaps it was because during the day, this star was not very conspicuous. Everyone present knew that at night, this star would shine brighter than all the stars, which would be awe-inspiring. Galaxy Sword Master. Now, Wu Yu used the black and white Dao sword to control the sword and flew towards one of the battlefields. This battlefield was very vast in the void. There were battles going on in the distance, but they did not interfere with each other. This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. When he arrived at his destination, there was a Huangjian level disciple here. He was a middle-aged monk, tall and with cold eyes. He folded his arms and said, "You have caused a lot of sensation. If you first go to the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking, what are you going to do if you challenge Li Kanghai? If you lose, it will be a waste of opportunity. If you win by chance, you might offend his master and be left with nothing." Wu Yu had nothing to say. His only purpose was to make himself truly famous today. The nobler Li Kanghai's status, the greater his reputation will be. Their battle instantly became almost the most eye-catching battle in the entire venue. Hundreds of thousands of onlookers, a large number of people are paying attention here. At this time, Wu Yu saw a blue sword shadow flying towards him from the direction of Wanjian Fixian Mountain. Judging from the speed of the sword, it was definitely at his current limit. Obviously, this opponent was not easy to deal with. Besides, Wu Yu has never fought against the 4th level of the Golden Core Dao realm. By the way, his golden elixir is at least dark gold. At this level, my advantage in elixirs will be reduced. Wu Yu knew it well. Not long after, a young man wearing aqua blue robes appeared in front of Wu Yu's eyes. His face was handsome and soft. He was almost the most exquisite young man Wu Yu had ever seen. His eyes were as majestic as his name, Kanghai. With his snow-white skin, long flowing hair, pure eyes, neither arrogant nor impetuous, he is really a handsome and beautiful young man that no one can dislike. I, Li Kanghai, would like to learn from my Taoist friends a clever move. The young man's voice was soft and moving, and he did things cleanly and neatly. After he finished speaking, a psychic weapon appeared in his hand, which was a long aqua blue sword. There is a huge gem on the handle, and the magic weapon array is drawn on the gem. This psychic magical weapon seemed to hide the entire ocean. It was definitely much better than Wu Yu's double swords. When it switched sword blades, it felt like it was overwhelming. The name of the sword is, Overturning the Sea Sword. Li Kanghai said. Now, everyone is paying attention. This person is good at the art of water, and his confrontation with Wu Yu would be a battle between water and fire. Even in terms of personality, Wu Yu is fire, while the other person is as gentle as water. In Wu Yu's imagination, a true genius would be as neither arrogant nor impetuous as Li Kanghai. But now he is his opponent. In the corner, there was Zhang Futu's cold eyes. If this battle is defeated, I am afraid that I will have to roll back to the Futu Hall in despair and become a fish on Zhang Futu's chopping board. Call. Wu Yu took a deep breath. In Shu Mountain, he still had to fight with swords, so in his hand, the Divine Eye Golden Sword and the 7-color Divine Fire Sword appeared at once. Ironically, these were gifts from Zhang Futu. The golden longsword and the longsword shrouded in 7-color flames appeared, instantly attracting more attention. In Xuanhuan, drawing a sword means starting a war, so Li Kanghai was not polite at all. He held the sword in his right hand, turned his left hand over, and a thumb-sized bead suddenly appeared in his hand. The sea water rolled in the bead, as if there was a sea hidden inside. Create a pearl in the sea. Vaguely, Wu Yu heard many people exclaiming. Obviously this is a very powerful psychic weapon. Bang! The sea-making pearl exploded in front of Wu Yu's eyes and turned into countless powders. Those powders instantly exploded into endless sea water, soaking Wu Yu in the sea water in an instant. The sea water was turbulent all around. Wu Yu had once been in the East China Sea. The feeling at this time was that of actually sinking him into the East Sea. And judging from the pressure of the water, at least the deep sea could cause such oppression. From the outside, a huge water polo appeared on the entire battlefield, completely covering the entire battlefield, directly trapping Wu Yu and Li Kanghai in it. This means that in this battle, Wu Yu can only fight Li Kanghai in the water. Once he leaves the range of the water, it means the battlefield he left. According to the judgment of the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking, Wu Yu will lose. Seeing this scene, Zhang Futu in the corner sneered. Fighting fire with water is seeking your own death. I thought you were so smart. In fact, Zhang Futu's thoughts were almost all those present who were paying attention to this battle. For Wu Yu, he was suppressed, and at this moment, Li Kanghai was like a fish in the water. He barely stopped at all, holding the sea-shaking sword, and killed directly in the water. Whoosh! In front of Wu Yu's eyes, Li Kanghai seemed to have turned into a water man, melting into the water. It was indeed difficult to compete. This must be the effect of his immortal roots. Okay, we have to fight. Wu Yu didn't expect that Li Kanghai would be so difficult to deal with. But, since you have chosen, there is no retreat, you can only fight and win. I have to go out for something today and will update the rest of the night. /U003ch//U003e. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 232. Just imagine, a person like Li Kanghai, a proud son of heaven and a top master, with top-notch talents, spiritual resources, knowledge and insights, is considered an outstanding person even in the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking. Furthermore, his age is not much different from Wu Yu. Wu Yu originally thought that he had reached such an age that he would be determined, but here in Xuanhuan, younger and more outstanding geniuses are constantly appearing, such as Nangongwei, Li Kanghai and the 40-year-old Tianjian level zinc juggernaut. However, he is not convinced. He knows that his capital exceeds that of everyone else, but his background is too low, and his current resources are too few. He needs time, a challenge, and a way out on his own. The dragon sword technique of overturning the river and overturning the sea, sure enough, as soon as Li Kanghai drew his sword, his top Taoist skills came out in response to the situation. When the sea overturning sword rolled in the sea, a heavy dragon roar suddenly exploded, and Wu Yu could see that Li Kanghai's sea overturning sword turned into a divine dragon made of sea water around him, coiling around his body, turning the river upside down, and the sword energy soaring to the sky. That water dragon is made from Danyu and transformed into endless sword energy. Its changes and power can be seen at a glance to be much superior to Wu Yu's current swordsmanship, forming a kind of crushing effect on Wu Yu on a level. With the Pearl of the Sea, the Immortal Root, and the sword cultivation technique, Li Kanghai showed his ability to completely surpass Wu Yu as soon as he took action. He received countless cheers for a while, and his eyes were cold, as if he had pronounced a verdict on Wu Yu. Fail. Huh. At this moment, Wu Yu was calmer than expected. He only knows that this battle cannot be defeated. This is the most crucial battle in his destiny. The winner will rise to great heights, while the loser will fall into the abyss. Zhang Futu was always waiting for the moment he lost. Wu Yu didn't need to look to know his cold eyes in the corner. The moment Wu Yu rang the ancient bronze bell, it meant that he and Zhang Futu had broken up. Buzz. The water dragon rolled, and the swordsmanship soared to the sky. At that moment, everyone was clamoring. In the deep sea, countless huge water dragons transformed from sword energy twisted in the water, advanced, and charged towards Wu Yu. Sky-splitting sword. Facing this vast water dragon, Wu Yu struck out with two swords almost simultaneously in an instant. The Tongtian three-kill sword technique is the foundation of the Tongtian sword sect. Tian sword. When a thick crack and the water dragon charged, the dragon's head collapsed. This was a duel between the two forces. The sky-bearing sword of the seven-color divine fire sword turned into seven-color flames, forming seven flaming sword energies, which pierced the water dragon's body at the same time. This was just when the dragon's head was destroyed. Wu Yu's two swords combined to tear the water dragon apart in that instant. Crack it! Boom! In the shock of everyone, the water dragon exploded to pieces. Regardless of whether there is a winner or not, Wu Yu has already shown the strength to resist Li Kanghai at this time. Among the fourth levels of the Golden Elixir, Li Kanghai is considered a very powerful master, while Wu Yu is only a master of the Golden Elixir Avenue. He is only at the second level. It is already a miracle that he can confront Li Kanghai head-on. His immortal root is very special, which makes him very talented in Kendo. He can almost do two things at once. In Kendo, one person, or even two people, can join forces to attack. Golden Elixir, immortal roots, and physical body are all top-notch. Although he is older and has a lower realm, it is undeniable that this person named Wu Yu is the biggest surprise among the newcomers so far. Go check this person out quickly. I guess many people have seen him, but they just don't know. Does Wu Yu have a master? Is he willing to become my master? Among the surrounding audience, Wu Yu's performance at this moment directly attracted the attention of the senior sword cultivators from Qingtianshu Mountain. In Xusan, genius is the least likely to be buried. Because as long as he is visible, countless people will notice him. Even if Wu Yu loses, he has proven himself today. Apart from his low level, this kid will probably have a bright future in the future. Of course, Wu Yu didn't hear these heated discussions now. He just thought that if he lost, today's big gamble would be a joke. Destiny seems to be in his own hands. I want to be a blockbuster, I want to be famous in Xusan. In his heart, he made this strong cry. This cry broke through his soul and was released in this endless world. This is his will and fighting spirit. Roar. When the water dragon sword technique was broken by Wu Yu, Li Kanghai's expression did not change. The water of the deep sea turned into the sea overturning sword again in his hands. When his eyes turned cold and his hands changed, the sea overturning sword split into two. Turned into two water dragons, rolling around him. Under his command, the water dragon roared in again, shaking the sea. Wu Yu clearly saw that the two dragons were going out to sea, and murderous intent was coming. At this moment, his heart reached the ultimate level of passion. He put away the golden eye sword and held the seven-color divine fire sword with both hands. At this moment, the seven-color divine fire sword suddenly burned, and the seven-color flames suddenly surged and swept across. Wu Yu's entire body was enveloped in flames, and when the flames spread out, they pushed some of the turbulent sea around them away. Immortal ape transformation. Crackling. Many super powerful beings, through the seven-color divine fire, saw Wu Yu growing taller and transforming into a golden ape, unparalleled in violence, and his flesh and blood strength continued to skyrocket above the critical value. This is the ancestral bloodline. This person has so many surprises. Why have I never heard of this person before? After returning to his ancestors, his physical strength actually increased a lot. While they were discussing, Wu Yu's arms covered with golden hair were much thicker than before. That was because he had used violent techniques, and at the expense of slightly damaging his flesh, and essence, he used these 7 techniques. 12 changes. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Once transformed, the power increases dramatically. The strength of his flesh and blood instantly climbed to the extreme. At this moment, Wu Yu roared angrily and hit the twin dragons like a cannonball. That flaming sword body slays the dragon in anger. Like a miracle, the heads of the 2 divine dragons were cut off violently. Wu Yu rushed forward with overwhelming force. In the blink of an eye, he used the 7-color divine fire sword to cut the 2 divine dragons into several pieces. The 7-color divine fire rolled out instantly. It's on Licanghai. Break. The opponent's defensive moves were very strong. Wu Yu used the last force of his violent technique to impact him. At that moment, Licanghai screamed in surprise. His body was forced from the state of water back to its original form. He was instantly enveloped in flames, and then was violently attacked by Wu Yu. The force flew out, and in an instant, he was knocked out of the fighting area. On the way, he even spit out a mouthful of blood. When he stabilized his body, it could be seen that the flames were still burning on his body, and his face was already a little pale. When Wu Yu took away the flames from his body, Licanghai's face was filled with shock when he saw him again. He didn't even know how Wu Yu defeated him. Although he was not seriously injured, the problem was that he was now out of the combat area. According to regulations, he lost. He is on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list, so he naturally knows the rules very well. Now, when he was traumatized, the vast sea lost control and returned to his hands, turning back into a sea-making pearl. Only Wu Yu remained on the battlefield. Wu Yu transformed from an immortal ape back into a human form. His clothes had exploded and only his trousers were still there. Under the sunlight, this shirtless boy's body exuded a crystal golden light, and his skin was like a golden gem. It was so conspicuous. Those eyes are like the scorching sun, scanning the sky and the earth. Behind them, the golden swastika is so dazzling that it attracts people's attention. Many years later, people still can't forget that day when a young man named Wu Yu fought his first official battle in Xuanhuan. They can't forget his heroic spirit at that time, and they can't forget the golden and shocking symbol on his back. Except Wu Yu put away his sword and held it in his hand. His clear voice echoed between heaven and earth. Although the fighting continued on other battlefields, many battles actually attracted not many people's attention. For a moment, Wu Yu's battle attracted the attention of the vast majority of people. Even the gaze from the sky. The Huangji unlevel disciple who was in charge was a little stunned for a while. It wasn't until Wu Yu said the word concession that he suddenly announced, Wu Yu won this battle and was included in the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking, replacing Licanghai's position. Licanghai is at the bottom of the list. This is the result, success. Wu Yu smiled with relief. Only then did he have the intention to see how many people were paying attention to him. When he looked around, he had a hunch that the number of people paying attention to him today had exceeded his imagination. Even without looking, he could feel the countless blazing eyes. It was a feeling of being in the middle of the crowd, being discussed, and being envied. In fact, most people find it quite unbelievable to see his miraculous and violent crushing at the last moment. This victory will definitely make him famous, and even make people in the entire mortal sword realm know him from today on. This feeling of glory is great. Of course, this was Wu Yu's biggest counterattack against Zhang Futu. He looked in the direction of Zhang Futu and saw this man clenching his fists and his face was ashen. He imagined how depressed he was at this moment. He couldn't even confront Wu Yu. When Wu Yu looked at him, he had already lowered his head, as if he had been impressed by Wu Yu's light. Of course Wu Yu knew how cruel he was. After all, before this moment, Wu Yu was just a piece of fat in his mouth. Now, 90% of the fat has flown away. From now on, you will no longer try to control me. Zhang Futu. Wu Yu's eyes were indifferent. He knew that he would have left this pagoda behind him long ago. Now, he heard those discussions. This young man named Wu Yu is a rare talent. Even in our Xuanhuan mountains, he is unique. With his performance today, as long as he makes rapid progress in the future, he will definitely have a bright future. I guess there will be hidden Xuanjian level disciples who will take a fancy to him, and maybe even Earth Sword level disciples. After all, he defeated an Earth Sword level disciple. By the way, what will Shen Xingyu think? As far as I know, this Wu Yu seems to be a Huangjian level disciple named Zhang Futu. He was brought back from abroad and has been a disciple for less than a year. However, he seems to be a disciple of Zhang Futu. Who is this pagoda? How dare a small Huangjian level accept such a disciple? After hearing the last sentence, Wu Yu knew that he had become it. Suddenly, he saw a flash of starlight in the sky and a figure landing. I'm busy late today, there are 2 chapters in total. /U003 cent /U003e /U003c /sente /U003e. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 233. The person who suddenly appeared in front of Wu Yu was a strong man who could not be touched /U003e. She seemed to appear out of thin air in front of Wu Yu. Only some lingering shadows of stars proved that she had just arrived. This is a charming woman wearing a purple sword robe. Her gentle face and exquisite figure attract everyone's attention. The moment she appeared, the people who were having a heated discussion all shut their mouths. Shen Xingyu probably has a crush on him. Wu Yu vaguely heard these words, and he determined her identity from this. The purple robe was flying, and his gaze was as deep as the starry sky, but there was a hint of cunning. She is the younger sister of the Galaxy Sword Master and Li Kanghai's master, the Earth Sword level disciple Shen Xingyu. As soon as she arrived, Li Kanghai half knelt in the void and said respectfully, "Disciple Li Kanghai, pay your respects to the master." Shen Xingyu waved his hand gently and said, "Get up, think about why you were defeated, and where you fell short. Go back. You have not fallen out of the 10,000 swords immortal ranking, and you still have a chance to advance." Yes, Li Kanghai was very respectful to this woman and did not even dare to look up at her. At this time, he quickly bowed his legs and went to a lower position on the 10,000 swords immortal list. In this way, only Wu Yu and Shen Xingyu were left standing opposite each other. What does Shen Xingyu want to do? Does he want to accept Wu Yu as his apprentice? Wu Yu seems to have already become a disciple. Although he is a Huangjian level disciple, he is still his mentor. It's probably not good for him to change his profession after only 1 year. Due to the appearance of Earth Sword level disciple Shen Xingyu, more people noticed Wu Yu, a young man who suddenly appeared. "Child, do you know who I am?" Shen Xingyu raised his eyebrows and asked in a frivolous tone. She approached Wu Yu in the void, and the strong fragrance of her body was blown by the breeze. Junior knows. Wu Yu nodded. "I wasn't very arrogant just now, why not now?" Shen Xingyu raised a smile on his lips and looked Wu Yu up and down. After all, this is a cultivator from the Kanghai realm of Zifu. In terms of momentum and aura, he completely suppresses Wu Yu. Wu Yu just smiled and did not answer. This is not easy to say, so it is better to shut up. "Okay, sister, I won't talk nonsense to you. Let me ask you, have you become a disciple?" Shen Xingyu crossed his arms and his bright eyes flashed with lavender light. "I have already become a disciple. I am a Huangjian level disciple of Futu Palace Master Futu," Wu Yu replied. He knows that there might be something wrong. Sure enough, Shen Xingyu looked down and said, "Who is Zhang Futu? Come forward." Wu Yu couldn't help but sigh. She really didn't take the Huangjian level disciple seriously. Zhang Futu could only come forward with his sword, but he was an old fox. He came up with a smile on his face, respectfully saluted Shen Xingyu and said, "I am Zhang Futu, and I would like to pay my respects to senior sister Shen." Shen Xingyu looked at him and said, "Zhang Futu, Wu Yu is your disciple. You are indeed very capable and can discover such a genius. This is your credit, but to be honest, with your ability, you cannot give him a better future. Master and apprentice are destined to be together, so I can't change your relationship. But you have to know that if you want Wu Yu to reach a higher level, you have to let him go and let him find another famous teacher, otherwise it will be ruined. Future, do you understand?" Zhang Futu's body trembled slightly and he said, "I understand." Although Shen Xingyu said this, he seemed to have the intention to accept Wu Yu, but after all, this was in public, and it was difficult for her to take it by force, so she did not go on to say more, but said, "As for when to let him fly, it's your decision to go further. However, from today on, I will pay attention to Wu Yu. Once you waste his talent, it will be your fault, let alone lead in the wrong direction. His current strength is still meager. If you want him to take risks, you must be moderate. If anything happens to him, I will ask you for an explanation." Although Shen Xingyu didn't explicitly say that he wanted to accept Wu Yu, he still meant it. It was just that Zhang Futu had to say it first. In fact, when it comes to this, Wu Yu understands very well that even if he is still Zhang Futu's disciple, Zhang Futu does not dare to do anything to him, because there are people like Shen Xingyu who are always paying attention to him. If Wu Yu does something wrong, she will know immediately. Something happened. Even if Zhang Futu achieved his goal, he would not be able to stay in Shushan any longer. "Okay, you can go down," Shen Xingyu waved to Zhang Futu. She had little interest in this pagoda. In his eyes, he was just an ordinary Huangjian level disciple. However, even so, Wu Yu couldn't directly tell Shen Xingyu the purpose of this pagoda. After all, he hadn't done anything yet and couldn't talk nonsense without evidence. Shushan has strict rules, and even Shen Xingyu cannot violate them. After Zhang Futu left, Shen Xingyu looked at Wu Yu again. Her face suddenly became gentle and charming. She turned her face faster than flipping through a book. She circled around Wu Yu several times, stretched out her slender hand, and grabbed Wu Yu a few times. "Muscles," sighing, "it's really strong. Well, I found that the quality of your magic weapon and Taoism are very average. The magic weapon is very poor, and its value is estimated to be less than 30 merits. As for the Taoism, it seems to be the 3-kill sword technique, which is also the most basic Jindan Taoism. It's not worthy of your talent, your master can't even give you anything good, it's really too bad. I suggest you get some tasks first, get some achievements, change the magic weapon, and cultivate the Taoist skills, and then continue the challenge. I guess I can still get some rankings. In fact, this was done in public. If it were in private, given her current level of interest in Wu Yu, she would probably give it directly. Wu Yu could tell that she couldn't let go of him. He naturally understood that being with such a woman would be 10,000 times better than being with Zhang Futu. Besides, she also had a terrible brother. Wu Yu couldn't directly indicate that he wanted to become her master. Here in Xusan, etiquette and respect for teachers were the most important. No matter how disgusting Zhang Futu was, he was still Wu Yu's master. If Wu Yu betrayed him openly, there would be consequences. Those who are suspected of betrayal will be cast aside in terms of personal character. After hearing what Shen Xingyu said, Wu Yu really remembered that now that he had won a match, it was the time to expand his reputation, but he still needed to settle down, so he had an idea and said, "Senior is right. Don't call me senior or old. I'm not much older than you. Just call me Sister Shen." Shen Xingyu's eyes lit up as soon as he looked at him, and he looked like he wanted to eat it. Wu Yu was flattered and said, "Sister Shen is right. I was harvesting a corpse flower when I was outside. I was about to exchange for some achievements, magical weapons, and Taoist techniques." Shen Xingyu was shocked and said, "Corpse flower? This is a good treasure, which can be exchanged for 1,000 merits. For a young man of your level, it is a windfall. In this case, don't delay, go quickly." She actually wanted to help Wu Yu herself, but it was difficult to do so because she was suspected of robbing his disciples. Wu Yu happened to have a treasure like the corpse soul flower, so she felt more at ease. She was a woman, and she thought thoughtfully. She took out a purple token from the sumuru bag, threw it to Wu Yu, and said, "This is my earth sword token. Seeing this token is like seeing me. You go and make some merit, exchange them in the main hall, and then go to other main halls to exchange for treasures. The main hall has the most items." Wu Yu took a closer look and saw that there was a formation diagram drawn on the token. The formation diagram vaguely formed the word. It was complex and mysterious and could not be copied by outsiders. On the other side, there were 3 words Shen Xingyu engraved on it. Character. Wu Yu knew that with Shen Xingyu's name and this token, he could travel almost anywhere in the entire mortal sword domain, as long as it was not a forbidden area. Shen Xingyu actually gave him the earth sword token. It seems that Wu Yu is bound to win it. Hey, let this girl take the lead. If I had known, I would have gone out earlier. It's useless for you to go out early. Not only does Shen Xingyu have the Galaxy Sword Saint as his brother, he is also younger and more beautiful. If I were Wu Yu, I would definitely choose her. Why should I choose you, an old man? Amid everyone's envious comments, Wu Yu put away the earth sword token. Shen Xingyu found Zhang Futu and said, "Zhang Futu, take Wu Yu to the main hall of Gong Palace, and then go to other main halls as quickly as possible, so that he can improve more before the 10,000 Swords Fairy War is over." This is great, but this time Wu Yu is with him, and he no longer has to worry about being frightened, because from now on, Zhang Futu can't touch him. Go. Shen Xingyu smiled. For such a young and beautiful woman, her every smile really makes people feel comfortable. "Thank you, Sister Shen." Wu Yu was in a good mood after meeting a noble person today. "When I get something I'm satisfied with, I'll go back here and think about it. I hope Sister Shen can give me some guidance." "No problem, go ahead, darling." The more Shen Xingyu looked at him, the more she liked him, and even darling said it. The reason why Wu Yu said he was thinking about it back nearby was to ask Zhang Futu to send him back by the way. He was still wary of this pagoda. After coming down, the old man in black robe patted Wu Yu on the shoulder and said, "Young man, work hard. Maybe there will be a place for you in Xusan in the future. Thank you for your kind words." Only then did Wu Yu realize that this elder from Xusan was actually better than he had imagined. He just happened to meet Zhang Futu. Let's go. Returning to Zhang Futu, Wu Yu said with a smile. Yet Zhang Futu had no expression on his face, and his sword flew up. Wu Yu jumped on it, treating him as a ride. The 10,000 swords flying to Immortal Mountain is just magical. Wu Yu's status has quietly changed with Zhang Futu. /U003ch//U003e. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 234. Go to Jindandi Wu Yudao first. Nangongwei is still nervously waiting for her. She was probably in a panic now, because all she knew was that Wu Yu was using the soul-eating talisman to fight Zhang Futu. Wu Yu thought that Zhang Futu would compete with him while wielding the sword. Along the way, Zhang Futu was expressionless, as if he had no emotions, and seemed to be thinking about something. At least Wu Yu said he was going to Jindandi, so he didn't say much and went directly to Jindandi. Since he didn't say much, Wu Yu didn't bother to speak. He never regarded this pagoda as his master, only as an enemy. Whoosh! Zhang Futu was very obedient, wielding the sword at full speed without stopping at all. He is very fast, and Wu Yu feels that he is at least the 6th level of the Golden Cordeo realm or above, and is stronger than a disciple who has just become a Huangjian level disciple. Soon after, the golden elixir arrived. When Wu Yu was in the sky, he saw Nangongwei sitting in a corner of the snow, holding her chin with both hands. Her face was pale, her heart was beating hard, and she was a little restless. Seems to be in a state of difficulty making a choice. Without saying a word, Wu Yu jumped down from the sky and landed in front of Nangongwei with a bang. "Wire!" Wu Yu called. Nangongwei suddenly raised her head and saw that it was him. Tears immediately flowed down her face. She immediately ran over and hugged Wu Yu. Her voice was choked with tears and she said, "Brother, I thought I would never see you again. It's okay, I can't die in this foreign land. There is such a girl, so concerned about his life and death." Wu Yu feels very warm in his heart. He patted Nangongwei's back gently to help her regain her mood. Suddenly, Nangongwei saw Zhang Futu gradually descending behind Wu Yu. Her expression changed, her body tensed, and she said, "Brother, why is he not dead?" Wu Yu signaled her to calm down and whispered in her ear, "Things have changed. Now he is not a threat for the time being. I am asking him to send us to the Hall of Merit. You can just follow me from now on. Don't panic." Wire understands. But what has changed? She still couldn't figure it out. "I'll tell you later." Wu Yu said the last thing, then pulled Nangongwei, walked towards Zhang Futu, and said, "Now take us to the main hall of Gongd Hall. We have never been there. I'm afraid it will take a lot of time to find it." The pagoda was still expressionless, but he did as he was told. From this point of view, Wu Yu felt that he was still in danger because Zhang Futu had not thought about it. If he had thought about it, he should have flattered Wu Yu now instead of being expressionless and terrifyingly cold. Maybe he was being plotted by Wu Yu, a young man from a small place, and it was difficult for him to fight back, especially when Shen Xingyu said in front of everyone that he was not capable of guiding Wu Yu. Continuing on the road this time, Zhang Futu was still very fast. The location of the main hall of Gongd Palace was closer to the Qingtianshu mountain, so it took a while to walk. Fortunately, all the main halls were in the same area. Compared with the branch halls, the main hall is naturally much larger. Wu Yu even heard that in the main hall, if you want to go to different areas, you have to fly with a sword. At Zhang Futu's speed, it would take 2 days to fly across the major sword palaces and reach the main palace. Within these 2 days, Zhang Futu rushed with his sword, while Wu Yu and Nangongwei were wary of him. When Wu Yu saw a group of mountains ahead, when a large number of vast, glorious palaces and cities appeared among them, he knew that the area belonging to the main hall was almost there. "Wire, I exchanged the corpse soul flower, and it's estimated to have 1,000 merits. You and I each have 500, how about it?" Wu Yu had already settled, and Nangongwei got half of the corpse soul flower. After all, they went out as a team. This matter was actually agreed upon before, but when Nangongwei saw the main hall, she suddenly shook her head and said, "Brother, this can't be done. I have decided that the discovery and collection of corpse soul flower are your sole responsibility. I still rely on you to survive, and I don't want any of this corpse soul flower's achievements." Wu Yu couldn't stand this matter, and he was very serious, saying, "This is even worse. I can't monopolize the harvest. You and I both need the resources to practice. Besides, you also want to make alchemy. To make alchemy, you need secret books and alchemy furnaces." Nangongwei couldn't resist him, so in desperation, she leaned close to Wu Yu's ear and said, "Brother, today, I'd better speak more frankly. I guess you have known for a long time that I am not an ordinary disciple. I came down from the Qingtianshu mountain. My father is very powerful. In fact, no matter what I want, he can give it to me. These achievements are of no use to me at all, but they are of great use to you. I just don't want him to let me do it for the time being. He found me, so he was sneaky, but I guess, in fact, he knew my whereabouts all the time, he just let me go." She hadn't confessed before, but she didn't expect to say it now. In short, she actually has everything she wants, but she just slipped out now and can't get it for the time being. She felt that this 1,000 achievements were particularly important to Wu Yu, so she chose not to do so. In the past, she was so familiar with Wu Yu, and she just wanted to try out what it felt like to earn these things by herself. Wu Yu understood. Nangongwei was kind-hearted and had little influence on her. Although she didn't know why she didn't go back to see her father, Wu Yu couldn't control it. Nangongwei wanted him to be better, so he didn't show any pretense and nodded in agreement. Indeed, in this way, the space for him to choose will be much larger. "Thank you, Wire." Nangongwei smiled with satisfaction and said, "You're welcome. Brother saved Weir's life. Everything is as it should be." This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. It's my fault for what happened to the corpse soul flower. I can't be counted as saving you. As the two chatted, it was almost as if Zhang Futu existed. Just as he was talking, the main hall of Merit Hall arrived. In fact, the main hall of Merit Hall is the smallest among the many main halls. In front of Wu Yu's eyes, there was a golden palace, which was the main hall of the Hall of Merit and Virtue. Thousands of swords were painted on its walls, each of which was different. Looking at them one by one, it was quite spectacular. At the entrance of the Hall of Merit, there were about 30 Huangji unlevel disciples, all of whom were similar cultivators to Zhang Futu, and some of them even knew Zhang Futu. "What are you doing here?" This is the place where Fandan disciples at the 4th level of the Jindan Dao realm exchange their merits. One of the Huangjian level disciples stood up and said to Zhang Futu. Zhang Futu didn't say anything, so Wu Yu stepped forward, showed Shenzhengyu's Earth Sword token, and said, "Seniors, this is the Earth Sword token of Earth Sword level disciple Shenzhengyu. She asked me to come to the main hall to redeem my merits." Shenzhengyu, when everyone heard this, they all looked at Wu Yu. They found that Wu Yu was indeed young, but very good. He was probably a Fandan disciple that Shenzhengyu valued, so they did not dare to neglect him at all. One of them, Huang Jian, the top disciple, came forward and said to Wu Yu, "You two please go inside." Sure enough, it was different with the sword order. On the contrary, it was Zhang Futu, but no one paid attention to him. They probably just regarded Zhang Futu as a disciple who led the way. Zhang Futu didn't receive the invitation, so he naturally didn't go in. Wu Yu and Nangongwei, led by the Huangji unlevel disciple, went all the way inside. After entering the Hall of Merit, they discovered that the interior was much larger than it looked from the outside. There were probably a magic circle similar to the Nazi array exists. Perhaps because of the ongoing 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking, there are very few disciples redeeming their merits here. The Huangji unlevel disciple took Wu Yu to a golden stone table. Opposite him sat a fat-headed and big-eared woman. The woman was dressing up. She glanced at Wu Yu and Nangang Wei, and then faced the Huangji unlevel disciple. After a glance, he immediately smiled and straightened his body, saying to Wu Yu, "You two young masters, miss, what do you want to change today?" Wu Yu took out the corpse flowers sumuru bag and some things he had obtained in the demonic abyss. The two sumuru bags were placed on the table. The other party opened the demon abyss first, took a look at the things inside, and then looked at each other with the Huangji unlevel disciple. The Huangji unlevel disciple chuckled and said, "These two are Shen Xingyu's juniors." Oh, the woman smiled and said, "You two have gained a lot. These things have a total of 50 merits." In fact, she was a little depressed, and she went to the main hall with less than 40 merits. Come on, it's really a waste of time. You can exchange it with the deputy hall master. However, it seems that for Shen Xingyu's sake, she gave him 50. When she opened the second sumuru knowledge, she was shocked and exclaimed, "Corpse flower." That's right, Wu Yu nodded. The woman suddenly laughed and said, "Awesome, you two are really amazing, you can even get the corpse soul flower. Although this corpse soul flower is useless to us in Xuanhuan, it is still a great achievement and is worth 1,200 merits. It's even better than expected, obviously for Shen Xingyu's sake." Wu Yu took out the silver charm and left the rest to the people in the Hall of Merit. He collected more than 1,000 sword hearts and put them into the sumuru bag. The thick sword hearts were all wealth. It was the first time he had them. With such a windfall, Wu Yu himself was a little panicked. "You two come back next time, you don't need to show your token." The Huangji unlevel disciple smiled and led the two of them out, and then pointed the way to the magical artifact hall for Wu Yu. Wu Yu planned to change his magic weapon and get another alchemy furnace. When I came out and looked at Zhang Futu, I didn't seem so afraid of him anymore. Indeed, Zhang Futu was nothing in the entire Shu Mountain. People like Shen Xingyu who could make Wu Yu achieve 1/5 of his achievements out of thin air were really powerful. These two young geniuses probably came down from Qingtian Shu Mountain. I'm so envious. After Wu Yu and the others left, more than 30 Huangjian level disciples commented. Zhang Futu continued to play the role of groomman and sent Wu Yu to the Palace of Magical Instruments. When Wu Yu took out the Earth Sword token, the Huangjian level disciples stationed there behaved exactly the same and welcomed Wu Yu to the Magical Instruments Palace. The Palace of Magical Instruments is more than 10 times the size of the Hall of Merit, so he needs to ask Wu Yu what magical weapon he wants and how much merit it is worth, and he will take Wu Yu there directly. By the way, I recommend it to Wu Yu. "I want a pill furnace," Wu Yu said. He and Nangang Wei looked at each other, and their interest in alchemy was finally realized. /U003ch//U003e. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 235. Before entering the main hall of the Magic Artifact Hall, Wu Yu asked Nangang Wei again and again, but she still insisted on not wanting any merit B/U003e. Wu Yu probably estimated that she felt that she would not stay in the mortal sword territory for a long time. If her father was as powerful as she said, he wouldn't let her hang around outside for so long. Wu Yu didn't insist anymore. When the Huangjian level disciple of the Magical Instrument Hall saw Wu Yu holding Shen Xingyu's Earth Sword token, his attitude was extremely good. He smiled and introduced himself, "My name is Zhang Fengguo. You can just call me Senior Brother Zhang." "Excuse me. You two, what magic weapon do you want to see?" "I want to see the alchemy furnace. The main hall of the Magical Weapon Palace is so huge. It is much better and more time-consuming to have someone introduce it than wandering around blindly by yourself." "Alchemy furnace? That's right, A disciple like you who has recently achieved the golden elixir Deo realm really needs to strike while the iron is hot and learn how to use the alchemy fire. There are hundreds of thousands of alchemy furnace instruments in the magical instrument palace. I don't know what you want. How much merit does the alchemy furnace cost? Wu Yu made a mental calculation, and the alchemy furnace should not be too bad, but he is a novice now, and he cannot spend all his achievements on the alchemy furnace. No matter how good the alchemy furnace is, it is a waste to give it to a novice like him. About 200 meritorious deeds. 200. Zhang Fengguo was surprised. He secretly thought that he was indeed a disciple related to Shenzhen Yu, and he was generous with his actions. For beginners like Wu Yu, a pill furnace usually had 30 merit points, but the top ones could only exchange for 50 merit points. 200 merits are enough for Wu Yu to use for a long time, and can also ensure that the amount of elixirs produced by Wu Yu will be greatly increased when he first learns. Please follow me, both of you. Zhang Fengguo chuckled and led the way with his sword, while Wu Yu and Nangang Wei followed. The passages in the magic weapon palace are very complicated, and the magic weapons are also divided into levels and types. In terms of placement, the alchemy furnaces that Wu Yu needed were roughly in the same price range and were basically placed in the same area. The passages in the Palace of Magical Instruments extend in all directions. After turning for about half a day, after turning several turns, a bronze gate appeared in front of you. The bronze gate was carved with various lifelike beasts. It is said that they are all fairy beasts, which made the gate look extremely solemn. Solemn. There are about 1,000 bronze gates like this in the Dharma Palace. Zhang Fengguo pushed open the door and brought Wu Yu and Wu Yu in. The door slammed shut. After arriving inside, Wu Yu was a little dazed. The interior was resplendent, with various rays of light competing on the walls and ceiling. The space is quite large. Looking at it, various alchemy furnace instruments are placed on the bronze and stone tables. There are about 500 in number. The alchemy furnaces here require about 100 to 300 merits and have different functions. There are 508 types in total. In fact, there are at least 10 stocks of each type of alchemy furnace that have not been put out. You pick one. When Zhang Fengguo spoke, Wu Yu was completely confused. He had already recognized the grandeur and wealth of this vast Xuanhuan immortal section after seeing these many alchemy furnaces. He listened to Zhang Fengguo's explanation, and then imagined the entire method. The Qi Palace was in such a grand situation, which showed that the vastness of Xuanhuan immortal sect still exceeded his imagination. It truly deserves to be one of the largest sects in the divine continent. Moreover, this is still the mortal sword domain, and Qingtian Xuanhuan is the foundation. Wu Yu walked around among the many alchemy furnaces. After all, he was a layman, so he couldn't tell the secret of this alchemy furnace. Seeing his doubts, Zhang Fengguo said, "How about I recommend one for you? You are a beginner now, and what you need most is the most stable pill furnace, so that you can best control the heat and have the highest rate of pill formation. In this case there is no need for elixir furnaces with strong properties, or elixir furnaces specially made for certain elixirs. There are about 200 achievements, but the ones with the highest stability are exactly 2 of them. Hundreds of achievements can be redeemed." Zhang Fengguo brought Wu Yu to one of the alchemy furnaces. The alchemy furnace looked like a tripod. It had 3 legs and was about half a foot in diameter. It was flat and stable. Several magic formations were drawn on it and it was running stably. The lid of the cauldron had 3 legs. A black dragon relief is pressing down on the 3-legged cauldron. Together with several magic weapon arrays, it does appear to be very stable. Moreover, the level of the magic weapon array is higher than the Divine Eye Golden Sword at first glance. This kind of alchemy furnace can also be used for attack, because there is a Taishan heavy formation inside, and it can also be used for defense, because there is a rock formation inside. I think it is the most suitable for you. Wu Yu looked around and felt that Zhang Fengguo was indeed right. What he needed most was to learn how to make alchemy first, and at this level of merit, this three-legged cauldron was the best. Wu Yu decided to redeem the three-legged cauldron. In a hall here, a Huangjian level personnel was stationed. Wu Yu handed over 200 sword hearts and got the three-legged cauldron. He learned that Wu Yu was Shenzing Yu. After the introduction, the man also gave Wu Yu a large sumuru bag, which was more than 3 times larger than Wu Yu's largest sumuru bag. Go well. Zhang Fengguo was about to send Wu Yu away. Unexpectedly, after Wu Yu put away the three-legged cauldron, he said, I still need to exchange for 2 swords, each worth about 200 merits. 200 each. Zhang Fengguo was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help but sigh that Wu Yu had so many achievements. At this time, there are 600 meritorious deeds. Ordinary Huangjian level disciples may not have so many meritorious deeds when they have the most merits. Come with me, Zhang Fengguo quickly walked with Wu Yu. The most common magical weapon in Xuanhuan Immortal sect is naturally the sword. In this magic weapon hall, swords account for almost half of the area. There are all kinds of swords, there are literally hundreds of thousands of them. Among them, they are divided into various levels and categories. Wu Yu's Divine Eye Golden Sword and 7-color Divine Fire Sword are estimated to be worth just over 100 merit combined. During the battle with Li Kanghai, he clearly felt that his sword was much weaker than his opponent's. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. With all due respect, there are too many swords. What type do you want, junior brother? Wu Yu thought for a while and said, because of my special immortal roots, I can use 2 swords at the same time. It is best to use 1 yang and 1 yang. If not, then use 1 gold and 1 fire. The most suitable one for the yin-yang sword will is naturally the black and white Taoist sword given by Feng Shui. Unfortunately, the black and white Taoist sword is not at the level of psychic magic weapon, and the power of the magic weapon array is too low. Zhang Fengguo smiled and said, in this Shu mountain, there are only swords that you can't think of. There is no sword that you can't imagine. You mentioned 1 yang and 1 yang. As far as I know, there is one that is most suitable for you. After saying that, he led Wu Yu in the Palace of Magical Instruments with great enthusiasm. About 2/4 of an hour later, he flew to a bronze gate with his sword. Zhang Fengguo opened the bronze gate and said, the sword here, almost the top swords in the Golden Core realm are worth about 400 merits. My sword actually only has more than 300 merits. Merit is too difficult to earn, especially when you reach the yellow sword level, there are more restrictions, but it is easier for you Fandan disciples to earn. Of course, ascetics not only have weapons to consume, but also Yuan Jindan, various elixirs, various fairy spirits, Taoist magic, talismans, etc. 400, what Wu Yu wanted was worth 200 each. How did he bring himself to 400? However, Wu Yu quickly cleared up his confusion, because Zhang Fengguo brought him to a magic weapon, a long sword. Wu Yu was very familiar with that magic weapon, the left one was pure white, and the right one was pure black. Almost exactly the same as the black and white Dao sword. Of course, there is a world of difference on the inside. Wu Yu opened the scroll on which the magical weapon long sword was placed, and saw that it read, this sword is called, Yin-Yang Dao sword. It was forged by the Yin-Yang sword saint, a senior swordsman in Xuanhuan. The sword body can be as good as divided into 2 swords, it is suitable for people who are good at using 2 swords together. There are 8 magic weapon arrays on it, including 2 main arrays, namely the Zhu-Yang 9th level array and the Yang swallowing black array. Has the effect of gathering Yang and swallowing Yin, and requires 410 merits to redeem it. Note, the 2 separate swords, used alone, can also be compared to the magic weapon long sword with 300 merits. Undoubtedly, Zhang Fengguo found the most suitable magical weapon for Wu Yu. The yin-yang Dao sword has the same appearance as the black and white Dao sword, and is almost a huge upgraded version. When Wu Yu took off the yin-yang Dao sword and split it in two, he felt the communication between the yin-yang sword will and the two swords, and the other party became excited because of the existence of the yin-yang sword will. To be honest, many people use dual swords, basically one in tandem and one in back. There is basically no one who can do two things like Wu Yu. Therefore, although the yin-yang Dao sword is very good, few people exchange it. Are you satisfied with this sword? Zhang Feng asked with a smile while stroking his long beard. Thank you, senior brother Zhang, for this sword being made for me. Very good. Zhang Fengguo was very envious and took Wu Yu away, speeding along the way. It would take a quarter of an hour to leave the magic weapon array. May I ask, junior brother, are you Shen Xingyu's disciple? Zhang Fengguo asked, pretending to be casual on the way. Wu Yu shook his head and said, not yet. If it is not yet, it means that the future is uncertain. Zhang Feng understood and smiled, junior brother has a bright future. Suddenly, Wu Yu stopped in the air. He looked to the left and saw bursts of golden light flickering in the corner of the wall over there. There seemed to be several golden pillars there, which were 20 feet high. This golden pillar, the pillars were on top of the Dharma instrument hall, as if they were holding up the Dharma instrument hall. That's that, Wu Yu was attracted and went straight over. When he got closer, his eyes flashed with golden light. What he saw was that there were 9 golden pillars in front of him, with golden dragons burning on them. Fierce, domineering, showing teeth and claws, full of divine power, this is obviously a magic weapon. Its magic weapon array is drawn on the dragon's scales. Each golden pillar has about 9 golden arrays. The golden array is quite large. Shocking, just one glance, it was like a mountain peak, pressing on Wu Yu's head. Brother Nangongwei also widened her eyes. She knew that Wu Yu was also good at a kind of weapon, and he even liked this kind of weapon better. I like it more than a sword. What is this? Wu Yu leaped in and stood in the center of the 9 golden pillars. There were golden coiled dragon pillars around this position. /U003ch//U003E. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 236. Zhang Fengguo laughed and said, this is the 9-direction demon pillar. It seems to have been forged by a senior from the Yanhuang Emperor city. Although it is a spiritual instrument, it is quite powerful. It is said to be able to break mountains, disrupt the sea, and suppress demons and ghosts. After changing hands for several times, it came to our Xuanhuan, and it seems that no one has used it for many years. After all, it is strange for us Xuanhuan disciples not to practice swords. To be honest, this 9-direction demon pillar is powerful, but it is useless to us Xuanhuan disciples. It is better to sell it back to the Yanhuang Emperor city. Maybe it is because no one wants it for hundreds of years, so it is placed here as a decoration. Without him saying it, Wu Yu deeply understood that the power of this 9-direction demon pillar is the most terrifying among the spiritual instruments he has seen. What if someone wants to take it away? Wu Yu was jealous. The 100 ghost blood pillar did not suit his state of mind, and he had long since stopped wanting it. Zhang Fengguo recalled and said, I seem to have heard that this 9-sided demon pillar needs 1,500 merits to be exchanged. This is almost the most valuable spiritual magic weapon in the magical artifact hall of the Fan Sword domain. Although it is worth at least 2,000 merits, even if it is only 1,500, no one can take it away, unless those yellow sword level and black sword level disciples remember it and take it away. 1,500. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Although it was expected, this value still made him hesitate. Even if he didn't exchange for other things today, it would not be enough for 1,500, and the corpse soul flower was purely luck to get it. If it weren't for the corpse soul flower, Wu Yu couldn't even exchange for a divine eye golden sword. This value made Wu Yu a little unwilling. His eyes were burning. What he wanted, naturally he wanted to take it away immediately, but unfortunately there was not enough sword heart in his pocket. Now, excluding the 600, there are only more than 600 merits left. Wu Yu will exchange for alchemy secrets and Taoist magic next. Especially Taoist magic, that is what Shenzingyu suggested him to learn. His current golden elixir Taoist magic is too basic. Junior brother? You don't use a sword, are you interested in this 9-sided demon pillar? Zhang Fengguo asked doubtfully. Wu Yu was a little out of control just now. When asked by Zhang Fengguo, he smiled awkwardly and said, "Indeed, it's just that the value is too high, so I'm afraid of it." Zhang Fengguo felt the same and said, "That's true. Sometimes when you want something, you will find that the merits are not enough. Just get used to it. After all, it's not easy to cultivate immortals." Wu Yu looked at him a few more times and was a little reluctant to leave. "Brother." Nangongwei kept looking at him, then looked at the 9-sided demon pillar, her eyes changed a few times, and finally she didn't say much. After sending Wu Yu out of the magical instruments hall, Wu Yu was still somewhat absent-minded. At Nangongwei's reminder, he finally went to the Daofa hall. Wu Yu spent half a day. He temporarily put aside his desire for the 9-sided demon pillar and asked for 2 Taoist techniques, one of which was the secret technique of alchemy. The secret technique of alchemy cost 150 merits and was considered the best secret book for newcomers to make alchemy. It was called the 9-9 Alchemy Dao. It had 9 kinds of elixirs, each of which had 9 methods of refining and 9 formulas, which were explained in great detail. If Wu Yu had not had Shenzingyu's bottom line, no one would have recommended this best secret technique of alchemy to him. With the 9-9 Alchemy Dao, Wu Yu's entry into alchemy, as well as the basics, were definitely much better than others. Another Taoist technique cost Wu Yu 430 merits. In this way, he had less than 100 merits in his hands. Wu Yu's principle is that he doesn't need to have too many things, but he needs to have the best. With more than 400 merits, he could have exchanged for several kinds of attack and killing Taoist techniques, such as the turning rivers and overturning sea dragon sword technique used by Li Kanghai, which is only worth 150 merits. However, Wu Yu chose to use all his merits and chose the best one he could control at present. It is said that even Xuanhuan level disciples practice more, and many Huangjian level disciples cannot exchange for this Taoist technique. Its name is Tianyang Diy Void Sword Technique, which was specially recommended to Wu Yu by the people of the Taoist Hall after listening to Wu Yu's needs. In fact, ordinary branch halls do not have such a level of Taoist techniques at all. Wu Yu only flipped through the Tianyang Dian Void Sword art and found it very complicated. However, as described, its power is quite huge, more than 10 times that of the Tongtian Sanxia sword art and more than 3 times that of Li Kanghai's Taoism. The most important thing is that it can fully bring out the specialties of his Yunyang sword wheel. In terms of immortal roots, Wu Yu's Yunyang sword wheel has infinite potential and may not be worse than other super geniuses. Finally, the benefits of the corpse soul flower were almost used up. Wu Yu was equipped with the top resources. From this day on, Wu Yu knew very well how important merit was in Shushan. It was almost the same as the money of mortals. The only pity was that he missed the 9-sided demon pillar. Wu Yu could only keep this dream in his heart for the time being. If he got a great merit next time, he would exchange it again. Of course, that was probably unlikely. Corpse soul flower was not available every day. After the end, Wu Yu met Zhang Futu again. Zhang Futu took them back to Wanjian Fixian Mountain without saying a word. However, this time, Wu Yu was ready to talk it over with Zhang Futu. In the sky of the flying sword, Wu Yu said to Zhang Futu in a calm tone, "I know what your purpose is for me. It's nothing more than that you think I'm from a small place, but I got something that even you envy, so you want to control me and transfer everything I have to you, so you even took me back to Xuanhuan. But you didn't expect that I was beyond your control." Zhang Futu was silent for a moment and responded, "Are you saying this as a winner, showing off your victory to me?" Wu Yu said, "It depends on how you understand it. Now the relationship between you and me has changed. I need you to understand that you have missed the best time. From now on, you can't do anything to me at all. In this case, if you are willing to let me go, it will be better for you. If you continue to entangle with me, no matter whether I live or die, at least you will not be able to succeed according to your ideas, and I don't want to die with you." This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. From then on, Zhang Futu became even more silent. He said, "You mean that as long as I terminate the master-disciple relationship with you, you will not care about the past with me?" Wu Yu actually hadn't thought about it yet, because Zhang Futu never knew that another reason why Wu Yu wanted to deal with him was because of the long-cherished wish of the woman who died in Huqi Mountain. However, Wu Yu now needs Zhang Futu to let go of him. This is the best way at the moment, so he said, "Nothing has happened between us. If you know each other, from now on you will follow your Yangguan road, and I will leave. Isn't my single plank bridge just right? Zhang Futu, I may not remember you after many years." Zhang Futu smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, you, Wu Yu, soar into the sky, and I, Zhang Futu, am unknown. How will you remember me? Whatever you say, I think if you are smart, you will know how to decide. Fighting in Xuanhuan is actually very troublesome, especially when the other party still claims to be his master. The matter of killing the master, according to the sect of Xuanhuan, according to regulations, it is quite serious." He. Zhang Futu just laughed coldly and said nothing more. He did not express his position, but only increased his speed and sent Wu Yu and Nangong Wei towards Wanji and Fixian Mountain. "What, brother, the person presiding over the 10,000 Swords Immortal list this time is the Galaxy Sword Master." As the time approached, Wu Yu told Nangong Wei what had happened before. "What's wrong?" Nangong Wei was a little anxious and whispered to Wu Yu, "This Shenzhenjiao knows me. I can't let him see it, so I can't be with you. I'll just blend in with the crowd below." Wu Yu was actually a little surprised. Obviously, Nangong Wei still knew Shenzhenjiao, which showed that Nangong Wei was as she said. Her father had a high status. You know, Shenzhenjiao was a first-rate celebrity. Okay, when approaching Wanji and Fixian Mountain, Wu Yu asked Nangong Wei to go down and mingle with the onlookers below, while he and Zhang Futu returned to the ancient bronze bell, where Shenzhenyu was still waiting for him. Of course Wu Yu, I have to return the Earth Sword order to her. Now in front of the enchanting and interesting Sister Shen, Wu Yu was not as nervous as before. He handed back the Earth Sword token. After thanking him, Shenzhenyu asked, "What did you exchange for? Tell me about it to Sister Shen." Wu Yu then said, "An alchemy furnace and alchemy method, as well as the Yin-Yang Dao sword and the Tian-Yang De Yin Void sword technique." Shenzhenyu was dumbfounded and said, "You kid, you are so rude when you use your merits. You just have some stock and throw it away. There won't be so many merits in the future. However, the things you chose are indeed quite good. The people at the top of the list of 10,000 sword immortals may not be as good as you." Wu Yu smiled slightly. He really knew how to spend this merit. At this time, he looked at Zhang Futu. Zhang Futu did not leave directly. Wu Yu felt that he should make a statement. At this time, the battle was still going on the battlefield. Under Wu Yu's gaze, Zhang Futu suddenly said loudly, brothers and sisters, please pass by. Zhang Futu, am Wu Yu's master. Today, I have something to do. Announce. Wu Yu has a great talent. I know that my potential is effective, but my ability is insufficient. A mere Huangjian level disciple is not enough to guide Wu Yu, a great talent. Therefore, I have decided to terminate the master-disciple relationship with Wu Yu today and let him find another talent. I sincerely ask all talented people to accept Wu Yu. As soon as these words came out, many people were in an uproar and looked at Wu Yu with envy. Of course, some also envied Shen Xingyu. Wu Yu knew that the last conversation between him and Zhang Futu had an effect. Zhang Futu finally gave up, so he knew what was going on. However, the ceremony was still performed in public, so as not to make people think that he was a disciple who deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors, and would immediately throw away his master when he achieved something. Therefore, he still said, "My teacher's kindness is unforgettable. In Wu Yu's heart, your status will never change." Of course, his status in Wu Yu's heart was that of an object of disgust from the beginning to the end. Naturally, it has not changed, but it just sounds better to outsiders. Let's look at Shen Xingyu next. Wu Yu didn't necessarily want Shen Xingyu to take him away, he just wanted to get rid of Zhang Futu in public. Shen Xingyu, don't wait any longer and accept Wu Yu. Yes, if you don't take action, I will. Under the gaze of everyone, Shen Xingyu stretched out his finger, hissed, and said, "You all guessed wrong, it's not me, it's the person above you." As she spoke, she pointed to the star in the sky. /U003ch//U003e. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 237. When Shen Xingyu said those words and pointed to the star in the sky, the whole audience went from talking loudly to becoming silent in an instant. This time, everyone was really looking at Wu Yu and Shen Xingyu, including many people who were still fighting, as well as those on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators, almost all of whom were at the Golden Core realm or above, looked at Wu Yu with disbelief, envy, and even jealousy. What Shen Xingyu said was really incredible. This caused Wu Yu to not react for a while. He thought Shen Xingyu was joking, so he quickly said, "Sister Shen, please stop teasing me, Before he finished speaking, Shen Xingyu interrupted him and said, "Sister, I'm not joking with you. The one above doesn't have any apprentices, but he does have some interest in you. Did you know that? Who is the person I'm talking about?" She was pointing to the star, and of course Wu Yu knew who it was. But he couldn't believe it himself and said, "Sister, please stop joking. I know how many pounds I weigh. This is definitely impossible." That was the Galaxy Sword Saint Shen Xingyu, who was only 40 years old. He was such a well-known figure in the entire Shu Mountain, even on the Qingtian Shu Mountain. He is even a disciple of the 7 Immortals of Shu Mountain. If he wants to accept him as his disciple, wouldn't that mean that he is the disciple of one of the 7 Immortals of Shu Mountain? If Feng Xian knew about it, he would probably faint. Just after getting rid of Zhang Futu, he met Shen Xingyu. The gap between them was really too big. Wu Yu looked around in shock and saw that everyone, like him, thought that Shen Xingyu was teasing Wu Yu. Moreover, when Shen Xingyu was rising, making rapid progress, and hitting a higher realm, he would not be there. Take on a disciple now. With Shen Xingyu's Taoist character, it is basically impossible for him to have time to guide his disciples. Looking at Zhang Futu again, his eyes were completely silent. Everyone could only hear Shen Xingyu's soft smile. She had a pretty face and a smile that captivated all living beings. Everyone was looking at her, waiting for an answer. Maybe someone wanted to hear that she was just joking. Even the top 10 on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list are eager to become Shen Xingyu's disciples. Of course, their master is basically a heavenly sword level disciple. However, Compared with Shenzhenjiao, a hundreds-year-old Tianjian-level disciple, the difference is still huge. After Shenzhenyu finished laughing, he said softly, "What I said can be said to be false, or it can be said to be true. What does this mean?" Seeing that everyone was confused, Shenzhenyu said, "The truth is that he intends to accept you as his disciple, but not now. It still depends on your performance in the future. If your performance in the future can make you a disciple within a period of time, if he is satisfied, he may accept you as his disciple. It may be a pity if your performance is average in the future. That's it, just give it a chance. Of course, although it is just an opportunity, it is much better than being accepted as a disciple by Shenzhenyu or other Earth Sword level disciples. At least the subtle relationship between Wu Yu and Shenzhenjiao is enough to make Wu Yu famous among Xuanhuan immortal sect. Shenzhenjiao is famous in Xuanhuan. Even if Wu Yu becomes his quasi-disciple, I am afraid that it will directly attract many sword-level figures such as Tiandi Xuanhuan to see, study and ponder Wu Yu. As for how long this period of time is, I don't know, sister. My brother is a weirdo, no one can figure it out. The attention he pays to you this time is beyond my expectation. All I can say is that you have to perform well and work hard, maybe your life will change. As for the others." She looked around and said, "From today on, as long as my brother doesn't say he doesn't follow Wu Yu anymore, no one can accept Wu Yu as his disciple, do you understand?" Of course everyone understands, who dares to compete with Shenzhenjiao. From this moment on, the way everyone looked at Wu Yu had changed. Of course, Wu Yu heard a lot of comments. This Wu Yu's performance is not outstanding. He is better than Shenzhenyu's disciples, which is nothing. It is not unusual for an Earth Sword level disciple to take a fancy to him. If a Heavenly Sword level disciple takes a fancy to him, then it's his luck. With his performance like this, why are the Galaxy Sword Masters paying attention to him? As far as I know, there are quite a few people on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list who are younger than Wu Yu, have higher realms, and even have the strength equivalent to the 5th level of the Golden Cordeo realm. At Wu Yu's age, if he defeats Li Kanghai, in terms of talent, just a second-rate genius. Did the Galaxy Sword Master see it wrong? Don't worry, Galaxy Sword Master will just observe him. Countless first-class geniuses want to become Galaxy Sword Master's disciples, so it's his turn. In a few days, Galaxy Sword Master will forget about him. In fact, more and more people are unhappy. Wu Yu also knew very well in his heart that his performance, consistent with his age, was not too bad on the list of 10,000 Sword Immortals, and that he would attract the attention of many Earth Sword level disciples. The attention of the Galaxy Sword Master meant to him it instantly increased his exposure. Whether this was a good thing or a bad thing, I couldn't tell. Wu Yu couldn't help but look up at the stars in the sky. He didn't quite understand what this peerless genius was thinking. Is this person a master like Feng Shui, or someone like Zhang Futu? Wu Yu had no way of guessing this. Okay, go back and improve yourself, fight for the next battle, and perform even more amazingly. Don't let others doubt my brother's vision. Yes. Wu Yu felt that he needed to calm down and think about it. Therefore, he bid farewell to Shenzhenyu and left in a relatively low-key manner, blending into the crowd. However, from today on, he will be so conspicuous even among the crowd. No matter where he goes, everyone is paying attention to him. In a few days, with the flow of people, Wu Yu's reputation will probably spread throughout the Mortal Sword territory, and even attract the attention of many people on Qingtianshu Mountain. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Wire. After trying to find a place with as few people as possible and leave, Wu Yu found Nangongwei, who was hiding aside. "Brother, I heard everything. Congratulations. If Shenzhenjiao really wants to accept you as his disciple, you will be famous throughout the Dongsheng Divine Continent in the future. Nangongwei was even more excited than Wu Yu and jumped up happily and pounced directly on Wu Yu. In this monastic world, especially in the Xuanhuan Immortal sect, the master-disciple system is very important. It is the connection between the four great sword-level disciples of heaven, earth, Xuanhuan, and the disciples of the mortal sword domain under a strict hierarchical system. It is related to inheritance and cohesion. The top level of Shu Mountain strongly supports any disciple of Tiandi Xuanhuan to recruit disciples and discover more talented sword cultivators. They will even compare the disciples of the four major sword-level disciples every once in a while. If the disciple guides well, he will be better. Great achievements can be achieved. This happened suddenly, and I haven't figured it out yet. Besides, it's not certain yet. Don't get excited first, calm down before talking. Although Wu Yu was also excited in his heart, he didn't get carried away. Well, as far as I know, although Shenzhenjiao is taciturn, he is a good person, very responsible, and a bit cool. He should be much better than that pagodan, Nangongwei said seriously. Nangongwei would not lie to herself. She might be familiar with Shenzhenjiao. Wu Yu felt relieved after hearing what she said. Zhang Futu is not young, but he is only a Huangjian level disciple. His status in Xuanhuan is not high, so he covets me. And this Shenzhenjiao is known as the deist idiot and is arrogant. I am afraid he will not be like Zhang Futu. Thinking about it this way, this is indeed an opportunity to change your destiny. He then said to Nangongwei, it seems that I have to fight for this opportunity. I'm afraid I will have to practice next. What about you? Nangongwei held his arm and said sweetly, of course, I will go wherever my brother goes. Now that I am a level behind you, I am not convinced anymore. Humph. Wu Yu thought for a moment. He was still a disciple of the Buddha Palace. If he wanted to concentrate on his cultivation, he would naturally have to return to the Buddha Palace. However, he didn't want to go back, but other sword palaces might not allow him to go. Except for Nangongwei, he no other acquaintances. After thinking about it carefully, he said, it seems that there is a disciple called the Spirit Sword Palace, which possesses the top spiritual energy in the mortal sword domain, which can be used by the disciples of the mortal sword domain to practice and achieve breakthroughs. However, 10 merit points need to be deducted every month. Let's just go to this place. Of course Nangongwei has no objection. Although Spirit Sword Palace costs money, it is better than having nowhere to go. After making the decision, the two of them spent a few days finally arriving at the Spirit Sword Palace at the foot of Qingtianshu Mountain. The Spirit Sword Palace was on a very high mountain. From that location, one could see the yellow sword domain of Qingtianshu Mountain, so the spiritual energy was almost half of it. Huangjianyu level. Looking up from the feet, the Spirit Sword Palace is shrouded in fairy mist and is completely white, like a heavenly palace, ethereal and elegant. Most disciples would not want to waste their achievements here, but compared to all the mortal sword domains, this is indeed the best place. The Spirit Sword Palace is very large, comparable to the main hall of the Magical Instrument Palace. There are countless personal areas inside like the Golden Pill Cave. There are about tens of thousands of areas. Each area is a closed white space, 50 feet in length, and it is 100 feet wide, but up to 3 people are allowed into one area. When Wu Yu arrived at the Spirit Sword Palace, the people around him immediately started talking after seeing him. This made Wu Yu understand that the news about Shenzhenjiao had reached the Spirit Sword Palace. Many young disciples seemed unconvinced, but the Huangjian level disciple in charge here was very knowledgeable. When he heard that Wu Yu had arrived, he quickly arranged a nice white training room. This training room was filled with fairy mist, and the inside was locked. No one else could enter without Wu Yu's consent. Wu Yu first handed over 10 sword hearts, then entered and sealed the place. Wu Yu was fine with being in the same room with Nangongwei again, but the little girl blushed fiercely again. I'm going to think about alchemy, let's do it together, Wu Yu said. Nangongwei shook her head and said, the Taoist skills you exchanged for your achievements must not be passed on to anyone, and I cannot see it. Even if it is the secret method of alchemy, if the immortal sect discovers it, you will be punished. Only then did Wu Yu remember this incident. However, when I think of Nangongwei for allowing herself to achieve so many achievements, I still have to thank her. \U003% \U003E \U003C /Sente \U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 238. Among the 99 pills, the simplest pill is naturally the qi condensing pill. Feng Xia can also refine the qi condensing pill. This qi condensing pill is almost the easiest to refine among all the pills. Nangongwei sat cross-legged in a corner of the training room, with all kinds of flames rolling around her body. The 9 color flames were like a cocoon, surrounding her. In the flames, she could feel it changing and transforming all the time. Wu Yu was in another corner of the training room. He first practiced the 3-legged cauldron and then placed it in front of his eyes. He carefully felt the magic weapon array of the 3-legged cauldron and the effect of the magic weapon array. It has effects such as wind blasting and tempering, as well as a magic circle that amplifies and reconciles the elixir fire. The magic circle is complete. Compared with ordinary cauldron furnaces, the success rate is unknown. Magical formations are something more complex and more magical than elixirs. Wu Yu is not in a hurry to copy the magical formations for the time being, but will first thoroughly study the alchemy. It is said that those who have achieved great success in cultivating Taoism have outstanding alchemy and magic formation abilities, especially in magic formations. The attack and defense formations also determine personal combat effectiveness. Although the Galaxy Sword Master is still testing himself, Wu Yu is not in a hurry. The most important thing to avoid in the journey of cultivation is to be impetuous. Refining elixirs requires the most precise control, so it can best train the mind. The temperature, timing, release time, strength, etc., many fine controls directly affect the success of the elixir. It is not necessary to have high-quality elixir fire and just burn it randomly. After Wu Yu spent some time and became familiar with the 3-legged cauldron, he began to study the 99 alchemy ways. This secret method actually first guided Wu Yu to control and utilize the alchemy fire. This elixir fire is just like his arm, it still needs to be trained and controlled before it can be completely controlled by himself. Although this is the foundation, it is a very important foundation. The ability to control fire is related to the temperature of fire, which is the foundation of alchemy. However, Wu Yu seems to be born to play with fire. According to the instructions of the Dan code, the Dan fire can change shapes in his hands in less than a day. He is very perceptive, and the strength of the Dan fire is almost determined by him. Mood control. Nowadays, it is almost possible to pass through the clothes, without burning the clothes, but to surround the opponent's body with fire. At this step introduced by the Dan code, Wu Yu began to study the 9 refining methods of the first qi condensing pill in the Dan code. The 9 refining methods are mainly the difference in materials. The steps for refining different materials are not the same. They are not the same and require different ingredients. One of the methods requires the use of a spirit pattern of the fairy spirit Wanling flower, as well as several auxiliary fairy spirits. Wu Yu happened to have these materials, so he was already ready for the first refining. First of all, it is necessary to heat up the 3-legged cauldron, let its magic weapon array operate, and create a refining environment in the cauldron furnace. Here, the control of the elixir fire is needed, because the temperature of this environment is very important and needs to be ensured. The elixir fire lasts but remains the same in strength. Once the intensity of the fire increases or decreases, the fairy spirit that has just entered the furnace may be destroyed or may not be fully integrated. Wu Yu had read the Jeju alchemy code well and strictly followed its steps. He prepared the proportions of the main ingredients and put the materials into the cauldron in a specific order and proportion. In addition to the operation of the magic circle, it is also necessary to enter several magic formulas into the alchemy furnace at this time to help the materials blend. When the inside of the alchemy furnace is surrounded by clouds and mist, and you can vaguely see the compatibility of the immortal spirits, close the lid of the cauldron, control the elixir fire, activate the magic weapon array, and start burning with fire. Why does this look like cooking? Wu Yu was shocked. In fact, what he said is right. Alchemy is very similar to cooking. Some disciples who are good at cooking make very rapid progress when they first come into contact with alchemy. This is because they are familiar with the principles of cooking. How to grasp a certain degree and adjust the temperature according to the heat. Making some corrections is the hard part. No matter what, the refining of the qi condensing pill is still the simplest, and there are not many magic formulas that need to be entered. Wu Yu spent the second half of it controlling fire. When he was refining it for the first time, he didn't have many ideas of his own. He strictly followed the time and operation of the steps, and basically there were no problems. Especially when it comes to controlling Dan fire, he basically has no problem. Then there is the question of when to activate which magic weapon array. This is not difficult. After all, the Jeju Dan Dao is introduced in great detail, and there are even many insights. Experience can be read. Wu Yu basically forced away the mistakes made by his predecessors. For example, if there is a strong fire at a certain moment, there will be flaws in the elixir. For example, if you use the wrong magic weapon array, the elixir will be destroyed directly. For example, if the fever lasts for a long time, the elixir will be exhausted and its spiritual power will be lost. This process was a bit thrilling for Wu Yu. Finally, a scent escaped from the cover of the three-legged cauldron. The scent was strong, indicating that the elixir might be ready. He gradually put away the elixir fire, controlled each magic weapon array to stop running one by one, and finally opened it at the moment when the fire was baking. Suddenly, a burst of white mist rushed out of the furnace cover. Successful, the white mist gradually dissipated, and Wu Yu saw more than 10 white pills in the three-legged cauldron. Wu Yu was about to put it away, took one of them, and found that it was successful. It is no different from other qi condensing pills. It smells so good. Nangongwei put her beautiful nose up, then looked at Wu Yu with some admiration, and said, "Brother, you are really powerful. I heard that it is rare to succeed in refining alchemy for the first time. In the future, he must be a master-level figure." Wu Yu said, "This method is indeed not easy. Don't be proud. I will try it a few more times. Brother, do you want to refine the Yuan Jin Dan? It would be great if you could refine the Yuan Jin Dan. We would have a steady stream of Yuan Jin Dan." Nangongwei opened her eyes and said expectantly. Of course, materials are needed, but the value of the materials is not as high as Yuan Jin Dan. If you can refine it yourself, you can save a lot of effort. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. When Nangongwei said this, Wu Yu's heart warmed up. He felt that he could successfully refine the qi condensing pill for the first time, and he might not be unable to refine the Yuan Jin pill. If he had the ability, he could just prepare the materials in the future. He started to read, flipped through several methods, and found that Yuan Jin Dan was several times more difficult. The control of the magic weapon array, the control of the Dan fire, and the techniques to enter were all very complicated, but this did not scare him. He still followed the steps and implemented them strictly, but the process was too complicated. A slight oversight would cause the furnace to explode directly, and the fairy spirits in the alchemy furnace would be scorched black and turned into ashes. Not only was it unsuccessful this time, Wu Yu also wasted 1 fairy with 2 spirit patterns and 5 fairy spirits with 1 spirit pattern. I still want to try it, but I don't have enough materials. It seems that the road still has to be walked step by step. My alchemy skills should start from the Qi condensation pill and work step by step to the Yuanjin pill. In the middle, I can try to refine the detoxification pill and the exorcism pill. Wu Yu calmed down in his heart. He stopped and did not move forward rashly. However, he finally knew what alchemy was all about. As a monk, resources are very important, and elixirs are a very important part of the resources. If you have the ability to turn immortal spirits into elixirs, their value will be at least doubled. The immortal spirit worth 1 yuan jinden is refined into elixir, which is worth at least 2 yuan jinden. It even requires top-grade elixirs, which are simply unavailable and require unique materials and methods to refine. The method of alchemy, the road to Taoism in the future. If you need to calm down, you can try it often. Now I still think about Taoism. Wu Yu noticed that refining the elixir and controlling the elixir fire, concentrating on it, might improve his spirit and will. With a calmer mentality, when tempering golden elixirs and practicing Taoism, progress will be faster. Wu Yu naturally did not waste the vast amount of spiritual energy earned by consuming 10 meritorious deeds here every month. After pondering over the method of refining alchemy for a few days, he put aside the matter of refining alchemy and devoted all his attention to tempering the golden elixir and the swordsmanship of Tianyang, Earthian, and Void. In the midst of practice, it has to be said that the high-grade heavenly magic is a bit scary. When Wu Yu was refining the golden elixir, at least 3/4 of the spiritual energy in the training room was competed by him and added to his golden elixir, allowing it to gradually grow. Wu Yu thought about Shenzhenjiao for a while. In Xusan, if you don't have a backer, you have no foundation. No matter how talented you are, you will be looked down upon, manipulated, and even coveted by others. The reason why I can rise quickly in Tongtian sword sect is because Master takes a fancy to me. Now, Shenzhenjiao may have felt that I am different, so he made this decision to make me shine. If he is, as Wei'er said, a senior worthy of admiration, I will try to follow him to practice Taoism, and I will also be a huge opportunity. With Shenzhenjiao as his backing, he can walk almost anywhere in the Xusan Immortal sect, and he no longer has to be afraid of people like Zhang Futug, the so-called Taoist idiot. You have to persevere. In this case, I, Wu Yu, will seize this opportunity. After all, there are countless people who are envious, jealous, and even hate me. They want me to be embarrassed. How can I let them get what they want? After having a firm idea in his mind, Wu Yu entered into latent cultivation. Nowadays, there are not many yuan jinden, so he always uses the magic method of jinden to temper the jinden, step by step, and stabilize the jinden first. Of course, the more important thing is to understand the void sword technique of heaven, yang, earth, yin. This Taoist technique is worth more than 400 merits. Even for Wu Yu, it is a mysterious knowledge. Compared with Feng Xiao's invisible sword, it's much harder to understand. There are thousands of words in the various descriptions alone. As the saying goes, heaven and earth have yin and yang, sky has yang, earth is yin, and between heaven and earth is void. This sword cultivation technique emphasizes the overlap of yin and yang between heaven, earth, and man. To practice cultivation, you must first experience such a world and seek out the changes in this world and the yin and yang of all things. In fact, the sword cultivation technique that Wu Yu was looking for was extremely suitable for him. He entered the sword practice with the yin and yang sword will of the immortal root. He understood all the techniques that needed to be divided into 2 parts faster than ordinary people. Visualize the mental ape. After encountering a problem, he entered the spiritual world and calmed down to think. In the fantasy, the unparalleled Monkey King was bathed in golden flames. The imperceptible changes in his eyes always seemed to allow Wu Yu to find a breakthrough point. backslash U003 cent backslash U003E backslash U003C slash cente backslash U003E. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 239. The sky is yang, the dry air rises, and the scorching sun burns it. The meaning of the sword falls from the sky, like the rolling scorching sun, burning the world. The Tian-yang, earth, yin, and void swordsmanship is divided into many parts. There are 4 main swordsmanships, and there are hundreds of sub-swordsmanships, and there are many changes. It takes several years for ordinary geniuses to master this kind of Jindan Taoism. For ordinary people, it would probably take them a lifetime to master it. It is so complex and mysterious that it would take tens of thousands of words to express it in words. The key is still to understand the sword. Xuanhuan sword cultivators follow a different path than other Taoists. The so-called sword cultivation is more like an amplification of mortal martial arts, so sword cultivation relies more on swords and weapons. The Taoist cultivators headed by Xuanhuan Dao Zone focus more on various magical Taoist techniques, manipulating the heaven and earth, wind, fire, water, and earth, and even the light of the sun, moon, and stars, manipulating the gold, wood, and rocks, and using Tao techniques to overturn rivers and seas. There are countless types and patterns of utensils, and the variety of them is simply dizzying. As for sword cultivation, the most important magical weapon is the sword. In comparison, it is true that those cultivators of Xuanhuan Dao sect are more like the Immortals imagined by ordinary people, while sword cultivators are more like extremely powerful warriors. In fact, in terms of offensiveness, speed, and combat ability, sword cultivators are indeed stronger, and sword cultivators are especially good at close combat. Wu Yu is quite close to sword cultivators in this regard. Therefore, it is actually very fitting to let him experience the power of the sword. As time passed, Wu Yu watched the whole audience and overcame many problems. How can this swordsmanship draw the yang energy of heaven and earth into the sword? Occasionally, it needs to be practiced over and over again. He stretched out his fingers, and each of his left and right hands turned into a sword, flying in the void to feel the secret of this sword cultivation technique. Nangongwei occasionally opened her eyes to take a look at him, and saw that his movements were mysterious, vaguely bringing about wonderful power in the void. There was a hard force wrapped around his left hand, and a cold air on his right hand. Yukan Shiken Kahu. Wu Yu is now playing with these two powers to communicate, and then get more from the air. Experience, thinking, any impatience and lack of investment will destroy this long-term understanding. During fighting and training, Wu Yu showed 2 completely different states. This was the manifestation of his talent. Even Wu Yu himself did not notice it. When he truly set foot on the path of cultivation, he showed the talent that came out was so terrifying. Even Minglong was surprised and said, "You have cultivated the indestructible body of the Vajra and the great celestial arts. Logically speaking, these will not be too exaggeratedly helpful to your understanding of other Taoist arts. Why are you like this, a natural genius? You can master this technique so quickly. As far as I know, this technique is beyond the limit of what you can master now." I don't know either. Even Minglong was surprised, and he couldn't possibly know. He only knew that when he was visualizing the mental ape, there might be someone somewhere guiding him. Sword cultivator takes sword as his life. Time passed, during which Wu Yu stopped practicing and handed over 10 more sword hearts in exchange for a month of training time. He could not stay in the Spirit Sword Palace for too long because the sword hearts in his hand were almost empty. Only when you can endure loneliness can you shine. Perhaps everyone has already known about Wu Yu's affairs outside, and there has been a lot of excitement, but Wu Yu still resisted the urge to go out. In this world, People's minds will always be in chaos, and Wu Yu found that he was also a bit crazy. All he could think about was becoming an immortal. Look up at the sky and see what is above the sky. I don't know how long it took, but Wu Yu found that he had already achieved some success in this Taoist art. He felt that it was almost done. Sure enough, the people from the Spirit Sword Palace came again and asked Wu Yu if he wanted to stay for another month. Wu Yu and Nangong Wei decided to go out. You can really hold it back. These days, your name is being spread outside. Many people from Qingtianshu Mountain are excited to see who you are. But according to the rules of Shu Mountain, if you are in seclusion in Lingjian Palace, no one will. If you can come in, you may have missed other good opportunities. After all, there are still many people who are waiting for the Galaxy Sword Master to give up on you before accepting you as his disciple. Kahu, the people from the Spirit Sword Palace, smiled. Wu Yu didn't say much, he knew what was going on. However, I can also understand how hard you work and fight to be able to truly impress the Galaxy Sword Master. Now people are waiting to see what changes will happen to you after you retreat, and whether you are qualified and worthy. Wu Yu, do you think you are confident about your identity as a disciple of the Galaxy Sword Master? The man asked tentatively. Wu Yu could tell that he also envied himself, but he was also a little jealous. Obviously he feels that he is not qualified. After all, who is the Galaxy Sword Master? Just look back, time will give the answer, Wu Yu responded, and left the Spirit Sword Palace with Nangong Wei. When he walked out of the Spirit Sword Palace, he found that there were indeed many people waiting outside. Most of them were Fandan disciples. They had never seen Wu Yu before, so they waited for 2 months just to see what Wu Yu was capable of. Some people are even preparing to challenge Wu Yu and gain the attention of the Galaxy Sword Master. However, Wu Yu came out quickly and disappeared without giving them a chance. Brother, you are attracting too much attention now. It is easy for me and you to be discovered by others. If you want to go to Wanjian Fixian Mountain, let's say goodbye first. I will wait for you below, Nangong Wei said when they were about to arrive. I don't know what's on her mind yet. Okay, Wu Yu must go to Wanjian Fixianshan again this time. After all, there are still 2 months left for the external challenge of Wanjian Fixianshan. Since he entered it from the outside, he can continue the challenge. Of course, the most important reason is that he feels that the cultivation of a good Taoist skill requires actual combat testing and training, and to withstand the pressure and come to the most watched Wanjian Fixian Mountain is undoubtedly the best training. It still takes some pressure to truly understand the peerless sword cultivation technique that cost more than 400 achievements. When he came back this time, his weaknesses, magical weapons, and Taoism, had undergone fundamental changes. To this day of the Wanjian War, there are fewer people challenging them. There are only about 20 pairs fighting on the battlefield, and the scene is a bit tepid. However, perhaps the news of Wu Yu's departure from the Spirit Sword Palace spread. When he came here, he found that there were many people around him waiting for his appearance. This time when he came here, he clearly saw the strong people around him. A lot more. These are all from the Qingtianshu Mountain, and it is said that there are even heavenly sword-level disciples among them. They all come to see how talented the young disciple that Galaxy Sword Master is interested in is. Geniuses are the hardest to look up to, so Wu Yu must at least catch up with the Sword Master of the Galaxy. Therefore, when Wu Yu came with his sword, everyone was watching and the whole place was in shock. He's coming. This is Wu Yu. There is nothing special about him. His temperament and sharpness are far behind those of Shenzhenjiao back then. At this age, Shenzhenjiao should be a Huangjian level disciple, or even close to the Xianjian level. These days, this child is rumored to be evil. If you look at it with your own eyes, it is indeed not special. Could it be that there is a hidden side? Shenzhenjiao saw it, but we didn't. Some young disciples said, this Wu Yu is nothing. Galaxy Sword Master is just toying with him. I heard that the top 3 in the 10,000 Swords Immortal list this time all rejected many in order to get Galaxy Sword Master to pay attention to them, the willingness of Tianjian level disciples to accept disciples. They are about the same age as Wu Yu, but they can already be compared with Huangjian level disciples. This Wu Yu, who came out of nowhere, is far behind. It is said that he is a Huangjian level disciple who was brought back from my small branch in Xuanhuan in the Far East. The leader of that branch is a first-level golden core. Oh my god, is there such a rubbish sect? Could it be the Xuanhuan disciples who were eliminated? Exactly. It seems that during this period, Wu Yu's old background has been dug out. The Galaxy Sword Master's attention was really a terrible storm for him. As long as he withstands the test of this storm, he may soar into the sky. Countless discussions, countless gazes, Wu Yu seemed to be standing in the center of the whirlpool. This was indeed the place that tested his heart and his sword the most. Shenzingyu appeared quietly in front of his eyes. He smiled and blossomed like 100 flowers. His watery tenderness and occasional playfulness were intoxicating. My good brother, I have been waiting for you for a long time. Are you finally here for the second challenge? When Shenzingyu spoke, most of them shut up. They were waiting for Wu Yu's answer. That's right, Wu Yu said. Shenzingyu looked him up and down. She found that Wu Yu had some changes, not in terms of strength, but in mentality. He faced doubts and criticisms calmly. Shenzingyu was very surprised. In fact, even she herself didn't know about Shenzingyu. The reason for paying attention to Wu Yu, but now, she seems to understand a little bit. She smiled sweetly and said, seeing that you are so confident, I have made the decision. You can challenge anyone on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list, you don't have to be just 1,000. When Shenzingyu said this, everyone was in an uproar. After giving Wu Yu such freedom, what Wu Yu would choose became the focus of everyone's attention. If he chooses a few thousand, he is not confident. Although he is outstanding, he is not worthy of being associated with the Galaxy Sword Master. If he was bold enough to choose the top 10, everyone would laugh. Almost all of the top 100 have the ability to fight head-on with Huangjian level disciples, let alone the top 10. How to choose is a question. However, Wu Yu had a budget in mind, and he said simply, in that case, I will choose 100. This is an intermediate number, not as bold as the top 10, nor as timid as a few thousand. The number 100 was higher than most people imagined. Everyone was still shocked. After all, the 100th person could compete with Huangjian level disciples. Wu Yu chose his own limit. Of course, it also reached the limit of many people. This number made the place tense. Once Wu Yu succeeds in his challenge, many people will probably be convinced. /U003ch//U003e. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 240. Chapter Split Island Heavy Sword Technique. Today Wu Yu is just practicing swordplay. He knows where his limit is, so he said this number. Read the book Kahu. It just so happens that this number is beyond the limit that many people can bear, and at the same time it is not the most exaggerated point. After passing this level, he was ready to make one last sprint, at least to make those who doubted him shut their mouths. He believes that Xuanhuan is fair. Geniuses are always favored, and people like Zhang Futu are always rare. Therefore, he decided to use all his strength just to shock the billions of miles of mortal sword territory. At this moment, in the center of the whirlpool, all the eyes, doubts, and scrutiny are endless pressure. 100, he is crazy. Last time, he barely beat Li Kanghai. How can he compare with 100 this time? Absolutely crazy. In order to get the Galaxy Sword Master to recognize him, he made such a crazy decision. It's sad. If I were him, I would take it step by step and show my abilities as much as possible. Why challenge an impossible existence? Someone else said, this Wu Yu is very courageous. Without saying a word, he directly killed from more than 9,000 to 100. It would take 9 games for others to do this. Shenzhenyu probably never thought that he would dare to make such a choice. Indeed, when Wu Yu said 100, Shenzhenyu could hardly believe her ears. She actually made it on the spur of the moment and estimated that Wu Yu could just choose around 7,000 to try. Unexpectedly, Wu Yu would do such a thing decide. Sister, did you hear it right, Wu Yu? Shenzhenyu asked with a slightly serious face. In front of everyone, Wu Yu smiled and said, Sister Shen, don't worry, I know it in my heart. Even if I lose, I won't be embarrassed. His attitude was firm and decisive, and it didn't look like he was speaking out of a hot head. Shenzhenyu recalled her brother's concern. After thinking about it carefully, if Wu Yu acted according to common sense, he would not let the mighty Galaxy Sword Master notice it. Want to read a book, Kahu? Okay, who is the 100th on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list? Come down, Shenzhenyu shouted softly, and then made way for Wu Yu to leave the battlefield. There's a good show to watch. Let me stop the fighting on other battlefields first. From the sky, an old voice came, probably from another Earth Sword level disciple who was in charge. After hearing the order, other disciples who were challenging could only stop. However, they did not complain. In fact, they all wanted to see what Wu Yu was capable of and how he could stand out so much compared to them who were fighting hard. Many battlefields here have just begun. When Wu Yu stood in the void and flew with his sword, the direction of the top of the immortal mountain with 10,000 swords was about where it submerged into the clouds. The air suddenly shook. Suddenly, a strong, tall figure fell from the sky and suddenly arrived in front of Wu Yu. The momentum of this person's arrival was so huge, as if a meteorite fell from the sky and hit Wu Yu in front of his eyes. Wu Yu looked closely and saw that this was a very tall man, almost a foot tall. Most people were between 5 and 6 feet tall. Although Wu Yu was tall, he was only close to 6 feet. This person is not only tall, but also very burly. He stands like a black bear in front of Wu Yu. His body shape is similar to the second king of the gods of the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea. He is really majestic and amazing. He looks like a mountain standing in front of him, blocking Wu Yu's sight. Looking at his face again, he is not as fierce as the second Lord God. In fact, this person is very young, roughly the same age as Wu Yu. His face is very indifferent, and he has the most common arrogance among geniuses. At this time, he is also condescending, looking down at Wu Yu. His eyes were like looking at a rabbit jumping around randomly. This strong man had a very rough voice. When he came here, he roared, Wu Yu, some brothers want me to cripple you so that the Galaxy Sword Master will not pay attention to you. Tell me, should I listen to my brothers? This opponent is at the 4th level of the Golden Elixir realm. He is as solid as a rock and has a strong aura. The Golden Elixir is dark golden in color, and his magical elixir technique is probably quite good. Furthermore, its flesh and blood strength is considered to be the most top-notch existence that Wu Yu has ever encountered. In terms of light strength, it is as powerful as a demon, and it is afraid that it will catch up with Wu Yu. Tell me your name, and let's talk about other things. Yukan Chikan Kahu BP, Wu Yu was not suppressed by this man's powerful momentum and aura. You are not qualified to know my name, let alone be a disciple of the Galaxy Sword Master. Get ready, I will beat you back to your original form immediately, and tell you to go back to where you came from. The other party's attitude was arrogant, and he hugged the thick arm, sneered, completely ignoring Wu Yu. Situ gonged, don't talk about it like a country woman, Shenzhenyu scolded, and the man immediately shut his mouth. Now it seems that the entire mortal sword domain is focusing on the two of them. Situ gonged has killed 100 people, but he has not received this kind of attention. It is even more difficult to balance his heart. The Galaxy Sword Master is his idol. These days, this person in front of him Wu Yu was the thing that he couldn't figure out the most. However, as long as Wu Yu is solved, all worries will disappear. In fact, he will become more famous from now on, and even attract the attention of the 4 stronger sword-level disciples. I will deal with him roughly and directly. Thinking of this, Sidhu Gong looked coldly and directly pulled out a huge heavy sword about 6 feet long and half a foot wide from the sumuru bag. This sword seemed to be carved from rock and was extremely hard. There were several magic weapon formations arranged. Although Wu Yu didn't understand the magic weapon formations, he could roughly feel that the effects of these magic weapon formations basically increased the weight and destructive power of the sword. A mere sword may weigh as much as a mountain. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. This is not the key point. Maybe it is the change of the immortal root. The whole body of Sidhu Gong changed instantly, from a flesh and blood body to a bright diamond. Under the shining of the eyes, the brilliance of the diamond suddenly gave off a dazzling light. The light, when Sidhu Gong moved his body, even made a sound like tearing the air. The strong man in front of him instantly turned into the most brilliant rock in the world. Sidhu's meritorious deeds are due to the thick earth-heavy sword and its immortal root diamond heart. The thick earth-heavy sword seems to have been exchanged for 300 meritorious deeds. There is also the diamond. The heart is even more precious. It is said that it was given to him by a certain master. Moreover, this Sidhu has many merits. Using Sidhu's merits and deeds to transform the diamond divine body from immortal roots, ordinary psychic weapons cannot hurt it at all. The 2 swords Wu Yu used last time seem to be. As soon as this person said this, he consciously closed his mouth. That was because Wu Yu took out a handful from the sumuru bag, half black and half white, alternating between black and white, and waving it, the long sword, a magic weapon that changes the world. As soon as this psychic magic weapon comes out, the brilliance will cover up the edge of the thick earth-heavy sword, especially when Wu Yu separates the yin-yang Dao sword and turns it into 2 long swords. At this time, at this moment, he indeed has the temperament of a peerless killer. Snort. Sidhu Gong just snorted coldly and suddenly let out a violent roar. Then he held the sword with both hands and raised it high. The light of his bright body almost engulfed the thick heavy sword, making Wu Yu unable to see clearly the power of his sword. Island-splitting heavy sword technique. I estimate that Sidhu Gong wanted to use the sword to practice Taoism. This is his strongest Taoist technique. It was created by my senior Xuanhuan. It is said that he used this technique to directly destroy a huge island in the West Sea. All split into 2 halves. Hence the name Split Island. Everyone knew Sidhu Gong very well and knew his next move before he made a move. Sure enough, Sidhu Gong's heavy sword came to kill him. On the giant sword, Wu Yu suddenly saw a momentum that could tear the world apart. Some Taoist techniques seemed simple, but in fact, their power was all in the slightest. This sword was indeed it has the momentum to split the island. If Wu Yu can avoid it, he will probably split the mountain behind him into a sliver of sky. Victory or defeat is decided. I haven't seen Sidhu Gong in action for a long time. I didn't expect that 2 years later, he has reached this level. I admire him. As soon as the sword cultivation technique was revealed, the whole world was impressed, and many people even evacuated from behind Wu Yu. Indeed, in terms of absolute power, what Wu Yu felt was a blow several times greater than that of Li Kanghai. This sword was like a meteorite from the sky, as huge as a palace, and it hit Wu Yu's head. What to do? Wu Yu was so daring that he closed his eyes and used one hand and one sword to feel the yin and yang energy between heaven and earth. To be honest, he came here to practice swordsmanship today, not to win. It was all about swordsmanship, and victory or defeat was secondary. When this sword came, it attracted the attention of millions of people, as well as countless psychological pressures and discussions from all living beings. This was the kind of momentum that Wu Yu had been waiting for 2 months to find. Many times, the most profound experiences emerge in the most dangerous moments. Therefore, when they saw that Wu Yu had not made any move to fight back or resist for a long time, many people could not help but be stunned. They could not understand whether Wu Yu was seeking death. Yin, yang, void. The closer the pressure came, the membrane in his heart was being impacted and shattered. Wu Yu seemed to be stuck to the thick earth-heavy sword, and was hurtled towards the realm of swordsmanship. In imagination, heaven and earth are filled with sword intent. For a moment, he saw countless gazes. From these gazes, he saw the pursuit of the sword. Suddenly, it seemed that many obscurities were suddenly penetrated. The point he had been looking for seemed to be grasped. But it seems a little late. At this time, everyone exclaimed because Wu Yu was struck by the sword. However, at the last moment, Wu Yu transformed into a 6-foot-long golden Buddha statue, sitting cross-legged in the void. All the attainments of the Vajra Buddha, the second level of his Vajra indestructible body, are on this golden Buddha statue. Boom! The island-splitting heavy sword technique hit Wu Yu, creating a heavy roar, and the heavy giant sword was actually bounced away. Even Sidhu Gong flew upside down. Wu Yu, on the other hand, instantly returned to his human form, spurting out blood and flying back. Blood was even squeezed out of his pores. Just before exiting the battlefield, Wu Yu gritted his teeth and steadied himself without flying out. Opposite me, Sidhu Gong was surprised, calmed down, looked at Wu Yu again, smiled immediately, and said, "You trash, trash. Are you scared to death by me? Don't you know how to fight me? Take a blow from me?" Not just him, everyone is wondering if the Galaxy Sword Master has seen it wrong. /U003ch//U003e